Imagine waking up before the rest of the world, before traffic, before notifications, before the noise of the modern age swallows everything whole. You open your eyes, and there, just beyond the edge of the world as you know it, emerges a city. Not just any city, a city built in the sky, suspended between clouds and rock, between myth and mathematics, between gods and stone. The mist rolls in slowly, like a curtain being pulled back on a secret that humanity buried for 500 years. The Andes Mountains stretch endlessly in every direction, green, violent, ancient, alive. And there it is, Machu Picchu. The name alone makes something stir inside you, something that goes beyond curiosity, something that feels like memory. 15th century stones perfectly fitted, not a single drop of mortar between them, gleaming with cold dew in the first light of dawn. Terraces cascade down impossible slopes. Temples align with stars. Channels carry water carved from the living mountain. And all of it was built not by machines, not by cranes, not by modern technology, but by human hands, human minds, and one of the most sophisticated civilizations the Western Hemisphere has ever produced. This is not the story you were told in school. This is the truth. Let me ask you something. When you picture Machu Picchu, what do you actually see in your mind? A ruin, an ancient mystery, maybe something romantic but vague, the lost city of some vanished people who couldn't survive the modern world. That's what most of us were taught, and it is profoundly, embarrassingly wrong. Here is the first truth they never taught you. Let that sink in. The people who descended from the Incas, they always knew it was there. The site was never abandoned by local memory. It was simply hidden from colonial eyes. And the second myth, that the Incas were a primitive civilization that collapsed easily under Spanish conquest. The truth. At its peak, the Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu, was the largest empire in the Western Hemisphere. It stretched over 4,000 kilometers along the western coast of South America, across modern-day Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, and Colombia. It governed over 12 million people, a population comparable to England at the time, without a written language, without the wheel, and without iron tools. Let that breathe for a moment. No wheel, no iron, no writing. And yet they built this. To understand Machu Picchu, you first have to understand the world it was built in. The year is roughly 1450 CE. Europe is still a century away from the Renaissance in full bloom. The Black Death has just swept through the continent. Christopher Columbus hasn't yet been born. And in South America, high in the Andes Mountains, a civilization is quietly doing something extraordinary. The Inca Empire had begun as a small kingdom centered in Cusco, a city they believed to be the literal navel of the universe. Over less than a century, through a combination of military conquest, strategic alliances, and administrative genius, they had expanded to control the longest empire on Earth. The emperor, the Sapa Inca, was not merely a king. He was considered the son of Inti, the sun god. His word was divine law. His body, even after death, was kept and consulted as an oracle. Machu Picchu was most likely built around 1450 CE, under the reign of Pachacuti, often called the greatest Inca ruler, a man who transformed a regional power into a continental empire almost single-handedly. Most archaeologists believe Machu Picchu served as his royal estate, a private retreat, a ceremonial center, and an agricultural laboratory, all in one. Why here? Why build a city at 2,430 meters above sea level on a narrow ridge above the Urubamba River, surrounded by sheer cliffs and perpetual cloud, because for the Incas, altitude was sacred. Mountains, apis, were living gods, and a city this high wasn't isolated. It was closer to the divine. Before the sun crests the mountain called Machu Picchu, the city is already alive. The priests, the Amayutas, rise first. They climb to the Intihuatana stone, the hitching post of the sun, a carved granite pillar aligned with celestial precision. They perform the morning ritual, offerings of coca leaves, chicha fermented corn beer, and prayers chanted in Quechua, a language still spoken by over 8 million people today. Their task is not symbolic. It is, in their understanding, cosmically essential to tether the sun to the earth and ensure it rises again. As light floods the eastern horizon, the agricultural workers, the Mediac, begin their day on the terraces below. These terraces were not merely farmland. They were an engineering marvel, each one designed with a specific drainage layer of sand, gravel, and topsoil to prevent erosion and retain moisture in a climate that alternates between drenching rain and scorching sun. Crops: maize, quinoa, potatoes. Over 3,000 varieties of potato were cultivated in the Andes. Also coca leaves, medicinal plants, and high-altitude grains that no other civilization on Earth had yet domesticated. By midday, the city is in full motion. Artisans shape stone with bronze tools and harder stones, shaping the famous ashlar masonry blocks cut so precisely that a piece of paper cannot fit between them. No adhesive, no mortar, just geometry, so perfect it has survived 5 centuries of earthquakes. Weavers produce textiles from alpaca and vicuna fiber, fabric so fine it was called cloth of the gods. Inca textiles were a form of currency, record-keeping, and status. The most sacred garments were burned as offerings to the gods. The Aklawasi, the house of the chosen women, was active with the Mamakona, women selected in childhood for their beauty, intelligence, or spiritual aptitude. They wove sacred cloth, brewed ceremonial chicha, and performed rituals that kept the cosmic order intact. They were not slaves, they were the spiritual backbone of Inca society. Meanwhile, Quipu, the knot keepers, sat under the shade of stone roofs, recording census data, tax obligations, agricultural yields, and astronomical observations, not in writing, in knots. The Quipu, a system of colored, knotted strings that encoded numerical and possibly narrative information with a sophistication that modern researchers are still working to fully decode. When the sun set behind the mountains, Machu Picchu did not go dark in spirit. The Incas were master astronomers. They tracked the Milky Way, which they called Mayu, the celestial river, and saw within its dark patches not empty space, but shadow animals, the llama, the fox, the serpent. Their cosmology was written in darkness as much as in light. The Temple of the Sun, a curved, perfectly constructed tower, was positioned so that on the winter solstice, a single ray of sunlight passes through a specific trapezoidal window and falls exactly on a sacred stone. Every night, the Amayuta priests would observe the sky, tracking planetary movements, predicting agricultural seasons, and maintaining the sacred calendar, the Inca year, divided into 12 lunar months, each connected to a different agricultural or religious festival. At night, the Sapa Inca, or his royal representative, would be served in a ceremony of extraordinary ritual, fine ceramics, roasted meats, offerings to the apis, not merely a dinner, a reenactment of divine abundance. Here is where the story gets even more extraordinary, because the more scientists study Machu Picchu, the less it fits the narrative of a primitive civilization. Let's talk about the engineering. A 2019 study, published in the journal Quaternary International, analyzed the seismic activity of the Cusco region and concluded that Machu Picchu was deliberately built on a geological fault zone, not despite the risk of earthquakes, but because of it. The fractured bedrock provided pre-cut building material, and the Inca masonry technique, using slightly irregular interlocking stones without mortar, creates a structure that flexes during tremors rather than shattering. The buildings essentially dance during earthquakes. They built earthquake-resistant architecture to 600 years before that concept existed in Western engineering. Now let's talk about water. Machu Picchu's hydraulic system channeled water from a natural spring 749 meters away through a series of 16 fountains arranged in descending order to sustain approximately 750 permanent residents and a fluctuating population of thousands during festivals. A 1994 study by Kenneth Wright and Alfredo Valencia Zagara documented that this system delivers 100 liters of water per minute and still functions today. The agricultural terraces, there are over 700 of them surrounding the citadel, were not simply flat farming platforms. Core samples taken in the 1990s revealed a sophisticated four-layer drainage system, a base of broken rock for drainage, then coarse gravel, then fine gravel, then fertile topsoil. This system prevented the entire mountain from collapsing under the weight of the city above it and the astronomy. The Torreon, the curved temple of the sun, is oriented with such precision that the June solstice sunrise falls through its northeastern window and illuminates a specific granite outcropping believed to have been used for solar rituals. This is not coincidence. This is intentional celestial engineering. The Incas did not have money. Let that disruption in your understanding sit there for a moment. The entire Inca economy, which fed 12 million people across a territory the size of Western Europe, operated on a system called mita, reciprocal labor. Every citizen owed the state a certain amount of work each year: farming, construction, military service, mining, or textile production. In return, the state guaranteed food, clothing, shelter, and care for the elderly, the sick, and the disabled. It was not utopia. It was not without coercion, but it was, by any measure, a functioning social safety net more comprehensive than anything in contemporary Europe. Socially, Inca society was hierarchical but not rigid. There were four main social classes: the Sapa, Inca, and royal family at the apex, then the nobles, then the priests and specialists, then the common people. But within those classes, mobility was possible through military achievement, religious distinction, or demonstrated skill. Food was sacred and political. The Incas developed the world's first freeze-drying technology. They would expose potatoes and meat to the freezing. Andean nights then press out the moisture under the morning sun, creating chuno dehydrated potato and charqui dried salted meat, the origin of the English word jerky. These preserved foods could last for years and were stored in vast network of storehouses called calca, ensuring no one starved even during failed harvests. Their art was not decoration. It was theology made material. Inca ceramics, particularly the large storage vessel called the arabalos, were marked with geometric patterns that encoded information about their contents and origin. Inca music used instruments unknown to Europe: the piccolo flute, the tinya drum, the saiku panpipes, instruments whose descendants are still played in Andean festivals today, and death. The Incas did not fear it, they celebrated it. the royal mummies, malquis, were kept, dressed, fed, and consulted as if still alive. They attended festivals. They were carried through the streets during ceremonies. They voted in political decisions. Death, for the Incas, was not an ending. It was a transformation into a different kind of presence. Here is what strikes me most about Machu Picchu and about the Inca civilization that built it. They had no wheel, no iron, no written language, no draft animals capable of heavy hauling, no modern mathematics as we understand it. And they built a city in the clouds that has survived for 600 years. They developed agriculture that fed millions in one of the most geographically challenging environments on Earth. They engineered water systems still functioning today. They aligned their temples with stars and solstices with a precision that took modern instruments to verify. They administered a continent-spanning empire with colored strings. They preserved food with technology that modern science only recently understood. What does that tell us? It tells us that human intelligence does not belong to any one civilization, any one era, any one technology. It tells us that the capacity for brilliance, for creativity, for adaptation, for wonder is not a product of modernity. It is the defining feature of our species. Everywhere, always, in every age. The Incas did not fail because they were inferior. They fell because they faced a biological catastrophe. European diseases killed an estimated 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas before many communities even encountered a European soldier. They were not conquered. They were devastated by a pathogen, and yet they survived. The Quechua people are still here. Over 8 million people speak Quechua today. The descendants of the Incas still farm the Andean terraces, still weave the sacred textiles, still perform the rituals, still carry the memory of Tawantinsuyu forward through time. Machu Picchu was never truly lost. It was waiting for us to be ready to understand it. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me which part of this blew your mind the most. Was it the earthquake-proof architecture, the freeze-drying technology, the Quipu system, the fact that the royal mummies voted in political decisions? Let me know. Seriously, I read every single comment. And here's a question I ask every single video, because I am genuinely, endlessly curious. Whether you're in Sao Paulo, in Tokyo, in Lagos, in Montreal, in some small town you think no one has heard of, I want to know. Tell me in the comments. Because history connects all of us, no matter where on this planet we happen to be sitting. And one more thing. We are building a journey through the civilizations of this world, one video at a time. And you get to help guide where we go next. Which civilization do you want me to cover next? Tell me in the comments. The Khmer civilization of Angkor Wat, the Mongols, the Byzantine Empire, the mystery of the Indus Valley. Tell me, because this channel exists for your curiosity and mine. If this video taught you something new today, something that school never bothered to tell you, then do me a favor, like this video, share it with someone who loves history. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we are just getting started, and the next journey is going to be even more extraordinary. History is not a subject, it is a superpower, and the more of it we know, the better we understand ourselves. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, keep being curious, keep asking questions, keep looking beneath the surface. Because the truth, the real truth, is always more magnificent than the myth.